Hello, friends. Are there aliens? What kind of aliens, Eric? You know, the kind from outer space? Well, what do I think? I'm really not sure what to think. Uh, I do want to, however, afford 5 wonder points to Mr. Bobby. Because, here's why. His narrative about the aliens is that there's a manufactured information war kind of a thing in which the American public is going to be sold a bill of goods that there are aliens around, and that will be used to promote one world government or something like that. Okay, let's leave off why that narrative would be a lie. Like, let's leave off the motive part as to what they're trying to accomplish with that for a second. One thing that I noted when I was reading about this David Grusch guy is, yes, he's very credible as a witness, but a spokesperson for the Department of Defense told Fox News Digital in an email on Tuesday there is no verifiable information to substantiate the claims. But that's not the part I was looking for. Let's see if I can find exactly the part I was looking for. Or I can quote it rather than just tell you. Many senior and former intelligence officers, many of whom he knew nearly his whole career, began confiding in him and provided documents and other proof that they were part of a secret craft retrieval program that the UAP task force was not read into, Grusch claimed during a separate interview with News Nation. The reason I'm giving Bobby 5 wonder points is because what Grusch is saying here is that he's not seeing anything himself. That what he's seeing is evidence that people within intelligence agencies have presented to him that convinces him that this shit's going down. But he's not seeing it himself. So the reason I'm giving Bobby 5 points is that narrative there is not inconsistent with the idea of a manufactured narrative. It's consistent with it more than it is consistent with like him actually. In other words, his credibility doesn't go as far because he's just reporting on evidence that others have given him, presumably for some reason to make some sort of case, you know? Whether or not it's because the evidence is real and they want it to get out and they just employing this particular guy as the kind of spokesperson for it, or whether it's because they're using this guy to sell a false narrative that this guy believes is true. Hard to say, right? I will additionally say, though, that one of the problems that we have in evaluating this situation is that everything of substance is being presented to this Congressional Oversight Committee that meets in secret because of national security reasons or whatever. We don't have access to any of the stuff that's actually being presented, so we're just having to go off of those few details and specifics that we can actually glean from the limited information articles we're reading. It seems like the general consensus among those articles is correctly inclined towards this guy is credible. But because of the way he got his information, it's not really adequate that he be credible. It'd also be necessary that he be unfoolable. And we have no reason to believe that's the case. So, the thing is, there's been an increasing amount of evidence that, in fact, exotic stuff is in the sky. Put it that way. I will not award Bobby any more than 5 points. 500 points. I love you too. Good night, darling. Because while it is the case that David Grusch is an unusually credible whistleblower, making unusually specific claims, and is additionally making a claim that intelligence agencies lied to the Congressional Oversight Committee. It is not the case that that guy that Bob was talking about, like Bob Lazarus or whatever, that he comprises the totality of most people's alien belief origins or whatever. I don't think that's the case. He is an example of somebody who has very low credibility, and while some people may buy into his story, it ultimately doesn't really matter if they're right despite believing him, or wrong because they believe him, or wrong despite believing him. Or, it's like, the point is, none of that has any relevancy to the totality of the case in favor of UFOs. So, for any case being made, there are some shitty pieces of evidence that may agree with good pieces of evidence. What makes them shitty pieces of evidence is that they're poorly argued, they exhibit some obvious partisan bias or something, they're from an unreliable publication, subject to source indicts or whatever. But you'll note that they both may be making the same central claim. You'll realize that it's correct if you employ the good arguments, the good card, the correct articulated reasons why. You'll be right for the right reasons. But if you read the bad card, you'll still be right, but just for the wrong reasons. So the thing is, even if Bob Lazar is complete garbage, and I suspect he is, that's not relevant to whether or not we should take the totality of the case in favor of UFOs seriously or not. And like I said, I think here at the outset, for me, the jury is still out. I don't know what to think. Hi, young sly boy. Do you think aliens would think our music taste is garbage? Maybe yours, but not mine. I agree with you, Mr. Bobby, that I represent a stark minority of people who's analyzing this correctly, but I also represent a stark minority of people who analyzes basically everything else correctly too. So the point is, Mr. Bobby, I don't think it's productive necessarily for you to worry about other people being wrong or convinced by the wrong thing. First of all, give people a little bit more credit than you give them. I know everybody's an idiot, but even if they are subjectively determined to believe in aliens regardless of the evidence, they can still distinguish between better and worse reasons to believe in them. And if they're determined not to believe in them, same thing. Oh, hey, Rachel. Hi, Keisha. How you doing? Are you guys like doing girl stuff right now, like in the bathroom? That's what girls do. They go into the bathroom and do girl stuff. They apply makeup. They powder their nose. I don't really think Carlos Paeva was arguing explicitly in favor of existence of aliens. Just because you present evidence that works for that side doesn't mean you're affirming that side. If you're doing dialectic, you don't have a preference as to what's correct. You just want to make sure you have all of the relevant data. Grusch's account was corroborated by Christopher Mellon, who served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence and worked with Congress on UAP reports. I mean, here's the thing. We shouldn't be at all pleased with the fact that we're having to determine credibility based on the individual's credentials or if they seem like a believable person rather than our own independent evaluation of the evidence because it's all classified. So, that's already a wrong way to be evaluating things. But the thing is, even if David Grusch is being basically used as like a involuntary mule for lies, right? An involuntary, unaware mule for lies. If he has evidence that an intelligence agency lied to the Congressional Oversight Committee, then it doesn't really matter if the narrative he's carrying around overall is one that's been, like I said, like they've made him an unknowing, unintentional mule. When he wasn't looking, they put stuff in his suitcase. So the analogy here is to stress that he firmly believes that this evidence is real, blah, 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 all this stuff. And let's imagine, though, that he's wrong. He's actually been had his perspective sculpted by a purposeful information campaign done on him. Well, if the information campaign produces evidence that withstands muster that proves the intelligence agency lied to the Congressional Oversight Committee, then even if they didn't, if instead they did this information campaign on this guy, they're still in big trouble. And there's still a lot of accountability to be handed out, right? So I will say that it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense that he'd be carrying this information campaign narrative unwittingly, and that information campaign narrative would include this very specific and significant accusation that has clear legal legs, namely that an intelligence agency lied to the Congressional Oversight Committee. So that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense that they would include that in a narrative that they were constructing and implanting, so to speak. I'm not disputing that it's conceivable that that mechanism could be attained. It wouldn't be inconsistent with the way intelligence agencies operate, and it's more consistent with his relationship with the evidence than the alternative. But there's not enough information to have any firm conclusion about it either way yet. It's like there's just not enough there yet to convince me of anything either way. Which is to say, there is enough there yet to not have me convinced that there's not aliens. If the evidence were clear that there weren't, I would deny the existence of them. If the evidence were clear that there were, if I could defend the claim, I would affirm that there are aliens. I can't defend either claim. So I'm in this limbo position of what I think about it. Not that it matters. I don't need to have a clear position on something when I shouldn't have a clear position on something, because there's insufficient argumentation to justify my affirming that position. Well, I mean, is it really that rare for people to say, I'm not really sure about aliens? I think about aliens is probably a lot more common than, say, with ghosts or Sasquatches, for people to say, I'm not really sure. With ghosts or Sasquatches, I think you're much more likely to get people who go, definitely, and people who go, definitely not. Regardless, I would like there to be aliens and for this story to be true. I would like it to be the case that we have in our possession, the United States does, technology that's not from Earth. That would be fantastically interesting. But no physical materials have been provided to Congress. This is consistent with an information campaign, but it's not inconsistent with it being the truth. Several current members of the recovery program have since spoken to the Inspector General's office, corroborating information in Grusch's complaint. Quote, his assertion concerning the existence of a terrestrial arms race occurring sub rosa over the past 80 years, focused on reverse engineering technologies of unknown origin, is fundamentally correct, as is the indisputable realization that at least some of these technologies of unknown origin derive from non-human intelligence. Carl Now, a retired Army colonel who worked with Grusch on the UAP task force, told the debrief. I mean, that's not very, he's not equivocating very much. You know, he's not obfuscating or equivocating. He's making a very clearly articulated and precise claim that sounds insane. Kind of like, really? I hope so. But I'm skeptical. Per protocol, Grusch notified the Department of Defense of the information he intended to disclose to the debrief, and the Pentagon cleared those intended on-the-record statements for open publication in April, just days before Grusch left the government. Huh. So, Grusch's on-the-record statements were cleared by the Pentagon as what? Not, I mean, is that, are they saying those things he's saying aren't classified things? Jerry Corbell, an investigative journalist and documentary filmmaker who was the only civilian named during Congress's historic UFO hearing in May 2022, said everything, quote unquote, is true. Grusch said he began providing hours of recorded classified information transcribed into hundreds of pages, which included specific data about the materials recovery program, to Congress starting in 2022. So this is something that the Pentagon cleared Grusch to say. Individuals on these UAP programs approached me in my official capacity and disclosed their concerns regarding a multitude of wrongdoings such as illegal contracting against the federal acquisition regulations and other criminality, and the suppression of information across a qualified industrial base and academia. Illegal contracting against the federal acquisition regulations and other criminality, and the suppression of information across a qualified industrial base and academia. In other words, people who should have been able to have access to it weren't denied access to it. But what is illegal contracting and other criminality? Huh. Crazy. Here's a different article. Grusch claims in a complaint that the Pentagon, other nations, and defense contractors have recovered fragments of exotic origin based on the vehicle morphologies and material science testing and the possession of unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures. That makes them exotic. Grusch goes on to state that the material includes intact and partially intact vehicles. While a previous UFO expert in the government might have been discredited, Grusch has bona fides that are worth taking seriously. An unclassified version of the complaint shared with the debrief states that the evidence of extraterrestrial tech was illegally withheld from congressional oversight by the intelligence community in order to purposefully and intentionally thwart legitimate congressional oversight of the UAP program. Huh. I thought at first I was being deceived. It was a ruse, he added. But as his career progressed, people started to confide in me, approach me. I have plenty of senior former intelligence officers that came to me, many of which I knew almost my whole career, that confided in me that they were part of a program. But he wasn't part of a program, right? He didn't say any of this stuff. Just a bunch of people told him this program exists. That's not inconsistent with an information campaign. Grusch added that he had not seen photographs of the spacecraft themselves. In April, the director of the Pentagon's UFO research told the Senate in April that they have found no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity, off-world technology, or objects that defy the known law of physics. Soon after Grusch's claims were made public, a Department of Defense spokesperson told Fox News there is no verifiable information to substantiate the claim. The Pentagon is the one who approved this public statement. But, I mean, that doesn't mean I have to agree with it, but, kind of weird. Jonathan Gray, a current U.S. intelligence official, said, confirmed the existence of exotic materials, adding, we are not alone. The disclosures come after a swell of credible sightings and reports have received attention in alien ships and potentially visits in recent years. In 2021, the Pentagon released a report on UAP, which found more than 140 instances of UAP encounters that could not be explained. Huh. Like, this quote's weird, right? The non-human intelligence phenomenon is real. We are not alone. echoing exactly what the other guy said. Same language there, right? Retrievals of this kind are not limited to the United States. This is a global phenomenon, and yet a global solution continues to elude us. A global solution to what? The debrief spoke to several of Grusch's former colleagues, each of whom vouched for his character. In a 2022 performance review seen by the debrief, Grusch was described as an officer with the strongest possible moral compass. I mean, I can see why you're extremely skeptical of all this, Bobby. I get it. There's a lot of stuff here that stinks, right? But probably not enough to like. Why is it that the debrief has access to a performance review of this guy from 2022, and the language in the performance review is not about his performance, but about his moral compass? I mean, did they write that performance review in 2022 because they perhaps anticipated that there'd be a need for him to have his character 100% established as vouched for or something? It's what it feels like, right? Nick Pope, who spent the early 90s investigating UFOs for the British Defense, yeah, said Grusch and Gray's account of alien materials was very significant. In the debrief article, Grusch does not say he has personally seen alien vehicles, nor does he say where they may be being stored. He asked the debrief to withhold details of retaliation by government officials due to an ongoing investigation. He also did not specify how he believes the government retaliated against him. In a statement, NASA said one of NASA's key priorities is the search for life elsewhere in the universe, but so far NASA has not found any credible evidence of extraterrestrial life, and there is no evidence that UAPs are extraterrestrial. However, NASA is exploring the solar system and beyond to help us answer fundamental questions, including whether we are alone in the universe. Very interesting. I just don't know what to think. Yeah. Actually, there's a good article here in the Atlantic, right? Why wouldn't this story be spreading? It seemingly has everything. It has everything. A seemingly authoritative source spilling secrets about a government operation designed to keep the American public in the dark. Oh, and aliens. The only problem is there's nothing backing it up. The thing is, in this article here in the Atlantic says Grusch's miraculous claims are unlikely to be proved or disproved. Well, the Grusch cycle reminds me of a story that Scholes recounts in her book told to her by Chris Rutkowski, a respected figure in the UFO community who has written about the topic since the 70s. A woman once told Rutkowski that all about how extraterrestrials had brought her on board their spaceship and shared their wisdom with her. When Rutkowski asked her if she had any proof, she showed him her arm. The aliens, she said, had operated on her, and their medical technology was so sophisticated that it didn't leave a mark. The absence of a scar, she said, was proof. That's funny. Yeah, and yeah. I mean, the thing is, the Atlantic article under, somewhat strawmans the pro case because there is some substantiation, at least corroboration, which isn't substantiation exactly, but if you've got multiple individuals who have positions that would enable them to know the information were true, corroborating one another, then you can start to build sort of a matrix of legitimacy by character argument kind of thing. Like, these people aren't the lying type or whatever. But you got to have multiple of them. And I don't think there's really enough in this instance, but nevertheless, that's a point in favor of the AF that the Atlantic article ignored and got wrong when it said if the only substantiation was just his words. The agreement of other people in positions to know would count as a form of substantiation, kind of. I need a beverage. I need a beverage like Gilligan needs the skipper. So the point is, I remain skeptical. I appreciate the fact that the claims being made by this guy are so precise and specific. So while they may or may not ever be falsified or verified, they're not vague. So that means they're more likely to potentially be falsified or verified because of their level of specificity. What he's also saying there that makes me like, okay, dude, is his explanation of how he knows they're alien spacecrafts is because of specific morphologies and various radiological isotopic signatures and stuff like that. But, you know, just because you don't know where that technology came from is not a good reason to conclude it's alien. Just because you've not encountered this technology before is not a good reason to conclude it's alien. The isotopic signature thing, well, it suggests that somehow they've got materials that have isotopic signatures that are never found on Earth, and therefore you could conclude that they came from outer space. But meteors come from outer space, so you know they have isotopic signatures that aren't consistent with the Earth. I'm skeptical, and that's why I'm giving Mr. Bobby 5 points, because I was under skeptical last night whenever I first encountered that. I was under skeptical. The thing, though, that makes the whole thing different than a normal UFO thing is, and the Atlantic ignored this part too, forgetting about the UFO part, he's making an extremely actionable claim about intelligence agencies lying to the Congressional Oversight Committee. Now, that's one of those things that's going to have to be verified or falsified. I mean, Congress isn't going to let their jurisdictional authority be trampled on. If the guy's right, they're going to be upset about it, you know? That's not something that is like an alien claim at all. That one, something's going to have to be done about it if it's true, you know? So that's what makes this one different for me, is that he's making that claim. And that's not just like a what should we believe claim. That's a who's getting tried for treason kind of thing, regardless of what they were lying about, you know? Because we can't have, it's functionally a military coup. If an intelligence agency is deciding to forego their civilian oversight, it's functionally a military coup. So that's probably the strongest point in favor of the AF, is mixing that real concrete accusation that, if proved, will result in some sort of prosecutions or censures or hearings or whatever, and with your bullshit alien story, it seems like just a good way to get the bullshit alien story exposed as bullshit, because it's going to come out that no, they didn't lie to Congress. And of course, I'm confident that he's not lying to Congress. He believes what he's saying, probably. Relatively confident. Because that would be too risky for him to perjure himself to Congress there were any chance of him getting caught for that, it's just, I don't think so. Especially when he's making the claim that the intelligence agency is lying to Congress. Now, note it didn't say which intelligence agency. And I think another article said intelligence community. Like, you mean the CIA, the NSA? What are you talking about exactly here? Some other intelligence agency that we don't know about? Who knows? Like, intelligence agencies don't lie to Congress. Specific people from an intelligence agency lie to Congress, potentially. I don't like the vagary in that claim, you know? In that part of the claim. But I like the specificity of saying things like, we have recovered alien craft. They're not from this planet. They're from outer space. You know, it's like being very clear that, yes, this is what I mean, and not being vague about that. Including claiming that, yes, there's definitely non-human intelligence behind this technology and stuff. Like, at least they're not being washy about it. About that part, you know. Whether it's all turns out to be bullshit or it reveals beneath it actual aliens, well, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm definitely on the side of I'll believe it when I see it, you know. Like, when I see evidence that convinces me and have access to, like, full access to analyzing it in its raw data form without anybody interpreting it for me and shit, I'll believe it. Or if I see a spaceship land and obviously aliens walk out of it, I'll totally believe it then too. Well, I mean, when I say I need to see it to believe it, I mean I need to engage correctly with the data to believe it. My eyes alone are not just going to convince me of anything. You know, there's lots of optical illusions and things that look totally like a Sasquatch from a distance, then when you look closer, it's a tree, you know. That shit happens all the time. So I don't trust my eyes that much, but obviously if I saw and experienced what was clearly a physical object, not a hologram, you know, if I could have good justifications for establishing that it definitely had physicality, like I touched it, for example, shook hands with the aliens and heard them talk, and, you know, then they ran their like ray over me and I rejuvenated 10 years. I mean, at that point, I'm going to just have to believe it. You know, sorry, Mr. Bobby. Nobody can remain skeptical in the face of that much evidence. Right. Look, there are people in the intelligence community corroborating his story. That's the only legitimacy he has in his story as far as it being defensible, his claims, that we get to see. So, presumably, there's evidence that we don't get to see that may or may not be convincing. If they probe me, I'd like them to just go ahead and probe my mouth. Just with a Q-tip, maybe is fine. They don't need to like stick a big dildo down there, you know. I'm sure whatever they're learning from their probing, they can accomplish that same outcome with a smaller probe. I know it said it's a global phenomenon, but that might only make them more paranoid of possible secret agencies in their own government hiding info. I wonder what illegal contracting means. Like, is that a euphemism for selling out to the Chinese or what? After all, the U.S. government was not privy to this information. Well, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, we know that this guy testified a lot. They hadn't been privy to his testimony previously. But whether or not he's presented evidence that they'd not seen before, and whether or not the evidence, if so, the evidence they had not seen before, they had not seen because they had been thwarted from seeing it purposefully by this intelligence agency. Well, those are huge questions that we're probably not going to get very clear answers to. Mr. Bobby, I don't think the current Grusch story involves any probing at all. So, I mean, look, human beings did exactly the same thing. They expanded out over the world. They found new kind of animal and they immediately killed it, dissected it, put stuff up its butt, all that kind of stuff. So it's not inconceivable that aliens would be like people and do that too, you know. There's no reason to conclude that aliens are necessarily more cool than we are. Well, the thing is, if you can travel billions of light years very quickly, then it doesn't matter that it's billions of light years. If you've got some sort of wormhole technology, that's a good point, Winston's mom. The article actually said he recorded hours of testimony. It didn't say he testified in front of Congress. So I'm not sure. Good point. Good catch. Well, if they're doing cattle mutilations, then they treat cows the same as we do. If they're doing crop circles, they treat crops very differently. If they're doing probing, well, people probe each other all the time. I probed Rachel yesterday. And, you know, if they are, what else do aliens supposedly do? They abduct you and they return you hours later and you don't remember anything. You want to go to Skinwalker Ranch? I'm curious about it too, but again, it's one of those things where I've seen some weird things. I've watched a lot of stuff about it, you know, and I've seen some weird footage and stuff that's confusing, but nothing definitive enough to convince me that there's anything magical going on. They won't let you go on the Skinwalker Ranch. What you should do, Acacia, is you should road trip up here, and we should go squatching. We've got plenty of forest around here. We could go out in the middle of the night and be spooked out by Sasquatches. Like I was watching Paranormal Caught on Camera earlier with Rachel, and there was this one super spooky one that made me get goosepimples and go, I wanted to see something like that in real life. In Valley Skinwalker Ranch dressing. Skinwalker Ranch dressing is a great like band name. You leave off the Hidden Valley, just Skinwalker Ranch dressing. You get 1 wonder point for that, Cosmic Pentastar. Oh, it's Wednesday. Wonder points are doubled. That's 2 for you. And that means, Bobby, you get 10. Right? Remember, the wonder points were doubled. I would have probably just given you 3 or something. But I forgot, so you get 10 wonder points. It is Wednesday. And as I hope we're all learning, on Wednesday, wonder points are doubled. Yeah, I want to go squatching too. And the thing is, we got a little car. So it's like, it can get dark, and you, me, and Rachel can drive out into the middle of the dark wilderness and then like sit quietly and hear sounds and think, I wonder if that's Sasquatch. You know, we could do that. Just like on TV. There's also a pretty great video of a portal opening up and a Sasquatch-esque figure coming out of it. That was no portal, Mr. Bobby. That was your mom's butthole. And there's nothing unusual about Sasquatches coming in and out of her butthole. Happens all the time. Their sadistic torture is based on countless abduction testimonies. They claim to be loving and peaceful and wanting to lead him. When did they claim that? I mean, I remember aliens ever putting out a press release. All right, go to bed, Ludafe, and sleep with your brain. Sleep like, okay, you know what? I'm giving you a wonder point, which is double for 2, because nothing helps you get a good night's sleep than taking 2 wonder points. Of course, if you consume them for that purpose, you can't retain them, but you have a wonderful night's sleep. I'm tilting the camera down because I'm thinking about sitting down. Okay, well, that's fine. The thing is, there might be more than one kind of alien. There's not necessarily just one kind. Maybe there's 450 different alien species that actually have the technology to come here. And, but it's not that interesting here, so a lot of them just come once and never come back. And that's why they're always doing different shit. It's like the cow mutilator people. They're from a planet that their religion thinks that a certain kind of animal on their planet is evil, and cows look just like that animal. The crop circle people, they're from a land where they hate things to be bumpy, so they flatten down everything. The probers, they come from a world filled with proctologists and gynecologists. I don't need any guidance from aliens. Thank you very much. Listen, alien, you guiding me is like me giving life coaching to INFP. You don't know me. You don't know what it's like to be human. I'm the expert on the human experience. You're just an alien. You want me to go tell you how to be a better alien? And I wasn't going to say anything, but your gills are hideous. Also, have you heard the good news about Jesus Christ our Lord? I try to convert the aliens, you know. I'm sure if aliens come around, there'll be evangelical Christians trying to convert them. No, listen. Not just our God, every species God was Jesus here on earth. I mean, there's lots of good reason to be skeptical of aliens. Because if aliens could visit the planet, they should have been visiting it not just recently, but forever, basically, because our civilization is not as old as, by exponential factor, as a civilization that's mastered freaking interstellar travel, you know. There should be more concrete evidence. And let's imagine there were a lot of different species of aliens. At least one of those species would choose to officially contact us. Probably, you'd think, right? Now, if there's just one or two different species of aliens, well, they might both not want to contact us, and that's not statistically unlikely. If there are 0 aliens, then we have to come up with a different explanation for weird shit in the sky. What's that weird shit in the sky? It's a sky Sasquatch. I believe that Sasquatch is our future. Hold him close and help him show the way. Instead of aliens teaching us how to be all peaceful and shit, I want it to be Sasquatches. I'm willing to listen to a Sasquatch. I don't find them threatening because they speak like cavemen. I have a feeling aliens are going to be all condescending about it. I'm like, hey, listen here, slugger, champ. You better knock that shit off before I knock that alien smile off your face. And the alien says, I'm not smiling. This facial expression on my planet means sorrow. Sasquatches have a live and let live lifestyle. Is that a euphemism for homosexuality? Meow. What are you meowing about? Well, I guess I have to go in the kitchen and see if he has food. Meow. Daddy loves you. You want a plate of food over there? Here you go, Mr. Man. You don't want to eat the plate up there? Okay. Oh, you have food over right over there by the trash can. You just want to meow at me. Do you want me to watch you eat? Do you want me to watch you eat? Is that why you're meowing at me? Oh, yes. Meow. Daddy loves you. Okay, can I go back in here now? Well, I vacuumed today. I also took down the brackets on the awning. I took down the awning. I haven't completely finished removing all the components to it because it's got a lot of freaking support structure shit, but I'll get it all done tomorrow for that. That's not that much more to go. My least favorite cryptid is the skunk ape. It's basically just like a stinky, smaller Sasquatch. When you see a skunk ape, you're like, well, it's a cryptid, but no Sasquatch, no chupacabra, I mean, no Loch Ness monster. It's a stinky monkey. I see that at the zoo. So yeah, everyone's least favorite cryptid should be the skunk ape. Everyone's favorite cryptid should be the rare hot air balloon riding Sasquatches. There's a small population of Sasquatches that actually uses hot air balloon technology to get around. Those are the best Sasquatches. They've got long, flowing, glossy fur and the piercing blue eyes of an aviator. The History Channel should be renamed the Alien Channel. Enough said. It's like, let's talk about the history of the pyramids. Were they made by aliens? 24 extremely local cryptids you probably never heard of. Well, there's one up here that we discovered. I call it the mammal caterpillar. Rachel and I saw walking across the road, and we tried to tell you guys how weird it was, and it's not anything that we could possibly identify. It was like a furry bratwurst scrooching across the road like a caterpillar with like two-toned fur. Your faves are kappas? What are kappas? I don't know what kappas are. That's a good reason to dislike the hambone. You know, wildlife's great if you're a tourist and enjoying it from afar, but if you have to live around it and it gets in your trash, then, then that's not cool. Hot air balloon riding Sasquatches do also have a tendency to get into people's trash. Sometimes they've been known to fly away with it, a whole trash can in their hot air balloon. Take it back to their Sasquatch camp. Well, that's why hot air balloon Sasquatches have dark rings like raccoons around their eyes. It's not because they're hamburglers. No. It's to protect their eyes from that hot air balloon sun. The interesting thing is they don't use fire to heat up the balloon. They just make it do calisthenics. Well, they've got the perfect getaway vehicle. Even if you spot them You can't chase after them. Jerk burglars. And the Hamburglar really should have changed out of his prison outfit as soon as he escaped. It's going to be very easy to catch him if he keeps wearing that striped prison outfit. People are going to know he's an escaped prisoner. But I guess if he's hiding behind Grimace, maybe they won't see him. You go, oh, it's just Grimace. He's not wearing a prisoner's outfit. He's fine. I'm a little concerned about the clown, though. We're all a little concerned about the clown. Why is he keeping company with a known criminal, like the Hamburglar? Why doesn't he prevent him from burgling further hams? Because he doesn't care. That's why. And the only person in all of McDonald land who cares is Grimace. The only thing he cares about is grimacing. He's always got this facial expression. And the reason he's always grimacing is because he's got brain freeze from drinking too many shakes. If you're constantly drinking milkshakes like Grimace, then you're going to have a lot of brain freeze. The Lake Chelan dragon? Is it a water dragon? One of the most convincing cryptid videos I saw on Paranormal Caught on Camera. It was these people who were on a boat and off the coast of Florida, and this weird, massive thing came up to their boat, and the woman was filming it, and I have no explanation for what it was. Her, like, totally authentic squeal of horror could not have been any more convincing that these people were obviously not trying to fake this thing. And you couldn't see clearly what it was, but it wasn't like a whale, it wasn't a shark, it was some big ass fucking thing, and I don't know what it was. Japanese humanoid river monster, small like a child, green scaly skin, and a depression in their head filled with water like a little head pond. Oh, maybe they keep feeder fish in there. I heard something down in the gully earlier. I went out with my flashlight, tried to see what it was. It sounded like, when I first heard it, it sounded like a person walking around down there, but I'm quite confident it wasn't. Because the last time I heard something, I thought, that sounds like a person walking around down there. It was a deer. That was during the day, so I could see what it was. But then, once I started really trying to look for it with the flashlight, it kind of stopped moving around. Well, one kind of cryptid that's local to around here is called Yosemite Sam. He's a rootin' tootin' cowboy who has a strange hat and shoots revolvers a lot, you know. He's not human. I guess if we were to say what creature he's most like, it's kind of like a badger. Dogman. I haven't seen any dogmen here in Mariposa yet, but I'll keep an eye out for them. Which part of them is dog and which part is man? Do they have the head of a man and the body of a dog? that would be probably the least desirable form of dogman to be. You probably prefer to have the body of a man and the head of a dog, but then you wouldn't be able to talk. So, I don't know. It would suck to be a dog man either way. Have you ever heard of melon heads? Are they melons that walk around on two legs? Nevertheless, national parks, state parks seem like key zones for all sorts of weirdness. Well, people disappear in them for various reasons. Um, it's it's a, it's wilderness. It's an unsupervised, uncivilized area where somebody can go be off by themselves and not live a normal life. Head of a dog, chest of a man, pelvis of a dog, legs of a man. So does that mean they have a penis of a dog? Just naked inbred humanoids living in the woods with misshapen heads. Man bear pigs are definitely real. But we saw some horses the other day. But as far as I could tell, they were just regular horses. Had they been unicorns, then we would have really had something. Yeah, I know. I want to go explore more, like off of the road into the wilderness, and see if I can find weird shit. Melon-headed whales are a robust small whale found primarily in deep tropical waters worldwide. They've been hunted nearly to extinction for their delicious fruit. I won't be able to stream in the wilderness. There's not going to be any internet connection or any phone reception, but I can film it and come back and upload it. The cryptids are the ones that survived the flood. I thought the animals that got on the boat were the ones that survived the flood. Or we could be talking about a different flood. Different floods, that's possible. Hammerhead sharks are real and crazy, right? Like, if you'd never seen one before, if they were super rare, and one finally swam up into the water and people saw it for the first time, they'd be like, that's got to be an alien or something. Oh, Noah's flood? I was talking about Steve's flood. Different flood. Hey, question. Which types besides having it in first and second slot demonstrate really good SI and Y? Okay, well, demonstrate really good SI. I mean, you'll see INFPs and INTPs do a pretty good job of making sure they're not overextended. In other words, they're more likely to make sure they're comfortable than I am. Before they sit down to do something, they'll probably make sure they pour themselves a beverage, and they may not get a lot of sleep. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do, maybe. But it's third slot SI. It's kind of childish. In terms of who values it, well, fifth slot values it a lot. So, like, my daughter remembers, like, everything that's happened before. And sometimes they'll bust me. with facts from the past that I don't like to hear, Also, she places much more value on nostalgia stuff like family photo albums and shit like that. But you're not going to see a lot of SI from her. In other words, if you're watching her go about her day, you're not going to see her go, it feels so good to sit in this chair. That would be like you can see somebody else demonstrating. You're not going to get a lot of that from Delilah. So people have different kinds of relationships with the function depending on what slot it's in. I value NI a lot, but I can much more easily think of examples of me ignoring it when I shouldn't have, or failing to use it when it would have been nice. Like, for example, why didn't I stop and film that little thing in the road? And I ignoring. It's like failing to recognize, hold on, this is that one time where you take advantage of this one opportunity because it's not going to happen again, and don't miss it, You ignore that NI, and for some reason, even though you stop and film things a lot and film much less interesting things, you didn't stop and film that most interesting thing. Who knows? Mothmen are definitely real. They are the reason that moth women can have babies. Do you think that people can develop certain functions, for example, an ISTJ developing their FE to have better FE than typical ISTJ? Well, again, those kind of questions, the problem with them is you have to establish all the perspectives for the question to be meaningful. So, can an ISTJ cause others to note an FE problem less frequently? Yes. Do they do that by developing FE? No. They do that with TESI. They can learn quick rules of thumb. They can allow them to prevent kind of social mistake that they regularly used to make, for example, but no longer do. A third party would say, wow, your FE's gotten better. That would be an incorrect way to describe it. The correct way to describe it would be, wow, you've found an effective workaround for one negative outcome from your FE polar. Good bud for headaches? I mean, this weed we have right now is great. I have no idea what it's called or anything, but it's fantastic. I love it. We opened 3 of the pounds of weed. The first one, we loved that. It was great. We liked it a lot. The second one, I'm not that super hot on. It's too flowery tasting. But it's like really good for a kind of weed I don't like. But this stuff, the third stuff, is the best by far. I love this stuff. It smokes so good. It's like Expando. You pull a bong rip and you blow it out and you just taste like crispy weed in your lungs. It's fantastic. Within 5 seconds, what would you name weed strain? Talking with fans, people. It's a great name for a weed. People would refer to it as TWFP pretty quick. But another possible name for a weed strain would be I don't know. Uh, Julian Splendor. Can I get an eighth of Julian Splendor? Yes, you can. Why is it called that? Because this weed possesses all the splendor of Julian. Who's Julian? If you don't know who Julian is, I mean, Skinwalker Ranch dressing is a good name for a weed, but it's a better name for a band. You know what's better for headaches than weed? Tylenol. You should try that. It'll kick your headache right in the butt. Get out of here, you, it'll say. I mean, I don't think in general smoking weed is a good way to treat a headache. I don't think it necessarily hurts, but damn, I'm trying not to smoke weed, so I have my wits about me for a new job as a behavior tech, and I just ran out of cools today. Torture. I mean, I don't find that weed scatters my wits particularly. It doesn't really do anything to me, but if you're a normal person who smokes a normal amount of weed, you probably get high occasionally. I don't smoke a normal amount of weed. I smoke an unusually large amount of weed. I don't like Advil very much, show media. I'm a Tylenol person over Advil. People tend to be either ibuprofen people or Tylenol people. Maybe if you're 90 years old, you're an aspirin person, you know. But people generally report that either Advil works great for them, but Tylenol doesn't really work, or the opposite. Tylenol works great, but Advil doesn't really work. Yes, I wouldn't know. Personally, it sounds horrible. Throwing up and everything. Migraines don't always make you throw up. I've never had one, but throwing up is not necessarily a symptom of a migraine. Unless you mean throwing up your hands in frustration. What I will tell you is this. If you spend a couple decades as a drunk, you will get very accustomed to throwing up. And it won't be that big of a deal anymore. I'll tell you what caused the pen to start. You don't have to live vicariously. I'm going to transubstantiate this bong rip from my lungs to your head with love. That was a good bong rip. You got a good one there. I don't get to feel any effects of it because it got transubstantiated to you, but I can tell it was a good bong rip. Avoid the Sprin if you have asthma. Aspirin's not good for you if you have asthma. Remember centuries back, doctors would do bloodletting? Yep. They have leeches as part of their medical gear. What you got there, doctor? I got my stethoscope. I got a thermometer. Oh, and this box of leeches. Why do you have those? I'm going to put them on you. Well, why? We got to get rid of some of your blood. You have too much of it. Have too much blood? Yes. Okay. How did you make this diagnosis? Well, you're sick, aren't you? Do you think you'd be sick if you had the right amount of blood? Maybe. You went to asthma camp? Is that where they taught you to have asthma? Is that like flawed TE logic? It's good to let it drain once in a while. It'll renew the system. Um, I mean, it's more of just sort of a NI thing than TE, really. It's like, get rid of some of the old blood and new blood will come, and that's better than old blood. But that presumes that they knew that, I guess they must have known that your blood replenishes itself. They teach kids at asthma camp the fine art of using an inhaler. Astafasta says, did you hear of the wildfires in Canada? I did see a brief mention of it. Can an ENTP ever demonstrate good SI when it comes to daily routine memory? I mean, my my daily SI memory stuff rarely fails me. I rarely forget about a meeting. I rarely forget about something I have scheduled or something I have to do or whatever. So, it's good enough. Whether I am good at the SE of actually following through on all the things I'm keeping in mind that I have to do, well, I am when I'm on speed. Messing with the air quality in the Northeast. Is it because the smoke is thick with maple syrup? You shouldn't breathe so much maple syrup, Astapasta. It's not good for your lungs. I'm Chris Van Hensing. Why don't you have a seat over there? Who's Chris Van Hensing? My area isn't so bad looking outside, though. Are you in New York? Maybe you're in Soho. It's better in Soho. Really, the air is the worst, like in Harlem and Manhattan. I mean, the Bowery, and it's not so bad at Long Island or Queens. Brooklyn, I'd say, is right in the middle. Brooklyn, you must hang out with Spike Lee all the time. At Brooklyn basketball games. It just smells like a barbecue. Brooklyn does, or the smoke from the fire, or what? The smoke from the fire. I'd like to think that Brooklyn smells more like a barbecue than Queens, for example. Queens smells more like a bodega. And I'd like to think that the Bowery is either uptown or downtown. Wall Street is another. Is that another? It's not a borough. It's just a street, I guess. How many boroughs are there? 6 boroughs? Queens, Brooklyn, Harlem, Staten Island, Long Island, Soho. Are those all boroughs? Not called Satan Island. It's called Staten Island. What about Fire Island? It used to be like back in the day that before homosexuality was normalized, there were two places that were associated with homosexuals. One of them being San Francisco, and the other one being Fire Island. Fire Island is an island off of New York. You hear about Coney Island all the time. You hear about Long Island all the time. You hear about Staten Island all the time. Why don't you ever hear about Fire Island? I'll tell you why. Homophobia. So anyway, maybe it's because Fire Island doesn't have an OTB, an off-track betting. Maybe it has no OTB and no bodega, so no reason to go there. But even though it's Fire Island, they still make you eat too many Nathan's hot dogs when you get there. Off of the coast of Long Island. I hear San Francisco is a crime-ridden mess now. Well, I haven't been to San Francisco recently, but I can tell you Oakland is, for sure. And you know what? Isn't the Statue of Liberty on an island? Is it on Ellis Island? Ellis Island should get to be a borough too. On Fire Island, everybody who lives there is a gay man. On Ellis Island, everybody who lives there is a stereotypical old-fashioned immigrant. Oh, we're here in America. Like that. They should structure the communities in New York to match my stereotypes better. So yes, everybody in Soho has to be dressed like Lou Reed and too cool for enjoying anything. Everybody in Brooklyn has to be playing basketball and potentially squirting each other with a fire hydrant. They like to do that in Brooklyn too. Or play stickball in the street, you know. Now, everybody in Long Island is at the Islanders game, naturally. Everybody in Queens, I'm not sure what the deal with Queens is. They're just like, we got the borough. We got the bland borough. We're in fucking Queens. There's nothing interesting about that one. That's what they do all day in Queens. The ones in Harlem, they're constantly going to the Apollo Theater. That's all they do in Harlem. Well, that and watch the Globetrotters, of course. Now, isn't New York better now that I've reorganized the boroughs? What are they called? Is that what they're called? Boroughs? It sounds wrong. The Daily Bugle. That's not a real newspaper, Mr. Bobby. That's just a comic book newspaper. The real newspaper is called the New York Meow. Which borough would you like to live in if you could pick any of the boroughs? I'm gonna pick the Upper West Side. I hear that's nice. I don't know if it counts as a borough, but I think it does count as a part of New York. I picked the Upper West Side. Would somebody like to pick Central Park West? I believe that's another part of New York that's not a borough. Well, I can see why. It's kind of an oddly shaped ear. Um, Maybe a little oversized for your head, given that it's so small I can't see it. Yeah, Upper West Side sounds fancy, huh? But so does Central Park West. Is that an area? Or what about Times Square? I mean, you probably can't live in Times Square. Like, there's probably not that many apartments right there. It's probably like, maybe there are. I don't know. They have those big, shiny signs. Seems like it would shine right into your window. Upper East Side. Oh, okay. What about the Lower East Side? Oh, the Bronx. I forgot about the Bronx. The Bronx, they're like, you know, what do they do in the Bronx? It seems like they're always like heaving like crates of things. Hey, here's a crate. Don't give this crate to me. Ah, here's a crate for you. That's what they do in the Bronx mostly. That and Double Park. Lower East Side makes you feel too laid back and downtrodden. Okay, where should I buy my brownstone? Which neighborhood has the brownstones? You hear about them in the TV shows and such. They're notable apparently for their brown stones. Mostly burning tires and vacant lots in the Bronx. Oh. Maybe in the Bronx they still keep alive the 1980s New York, where the subway's covered in graffiti and everybody's breakdancing on cardboard boxes. And they're both decent options. What? Burning tires and vacant lots? They're both decent options. Not the best options for a night's accommodation, but you know. When I go to Manhattan, I stay at the Surrey on the Upper East Side. After Giuliani fixed up New York City, people were saying, yeah, but it's lost its flavor and personality. That's what LCD Sound System was saying. New York, I love you, but you're bringing me down. Greenwich Village. Is that in New York? Greenwich Village? Yeah, I guess so. It seems to me that's probably like Jewish delis. Oh, come here, sit down, have some matzo balls. Like those kind of people, maybe. Park Slope? Is that a neighborhood in New York? Park Slope? I've never heard that one. Um, do they have a theater district? Is that part of New York? Is it called the theater district, or is it just 42nd Street and Broadway? Park Slope is an upper class area of Brooklyn. Hell's Kitchen. I've heard of that one. That one, you've got crowded tenement buildings filled with Italian immigrants selling fruit from carts in the street. I heard Jenny from the block used to have a little, now has a lot of what? I wonder what she has a lot of. Is it porcupines? or something else? Well, at least in terms of safety and pricing, it's upper class, Park Slope. The way she walks, the way she talks, she's real. But the way she looks and the way she smells is deeply inauthentic. What's the most expensive part of New York to live in? If you wanted to get a nice, classy, cosmopolitan apartment in the most expensive area, where would it be? Would it be at the top of the Empire State Building? Would it be down by the docks, where the dock workers throw fish at each other? Jenny from the Block, Jennifer Lopez, single from the early 2000s. Oh. Well, what she has a lot of in that case is money. Where can I find a Puerto Rican family selling blankets off the hood of a dented 1987 Chevy Caprice? El Monte? No, we're not moving to New York. I'm just curious. We'll probably go visit there at some point, but we're definitely not moving to New York. We're staying right here. Puerto Ricans are just East Coast Mexicans. So you could just do that in El Monte, just be Mexicans instead of Puerto Ricans. They both speak the same language. The difference is Puerto Rico, unlike Mexico, is the land of grapefruit flavor. Upper East Side would be the most expensive. Okay. And is the uppermost part of the Upper East Side, the uppermost and easternmost part of the Upper East Side, the most expensive part of the Upper East Side? I'm in the lower west or Upper East Side. I'm not in the Upper East or Upper East Side. Park Slope had over 750 million in sales volume. South Mexicans, I guess, are they like Brazilians? And North Mexicans are Inuits. There. Now you know all the different kinds of Mexicans. Tied for 36th with a median sales price of $1.15 million are the most expensive neighborhoods in two boroughs. Wow. No, that's an urban myth, Mr. Bobby. It's an urban myth. That's just, they just don't speak Spanish very well. The truth of it. They all had bad teachers. So that's why you can barely understand their Spanish. Their Spanish teacher was like the sign language interpreter that African speech. Somehow convinced the administrators that he knew how to speak Spanish, but he was just making up half of it. Okay, wait, I don't even have what I need. What am I doing? Why am I such a lame-o schmamo? So, I wonder if Michelle Shocked is an alien. That would explain their strange behavior. She must think I'm a cow and she's trying to mutilate me. American cheese are not my favorite kind of cheese. Aliens are anti-communist? Well, that's good. I don't want any commie aliens coming to Earth, you know. The aliens get out of the spaceship, they're like, hey, guys, look. You guys just really need to just all chip in for the community good and be communists and everything. And then you find out the real reason they left their planet is because it turned out just like Oakland. Nothing but fucking car fires and homeless towns, you know. It's like our neighbor was saying. He works there. He's like, yeah, just about every month it seems like somebody lights a car on fire, like near his work or whatever. It's crazy. I mean, lots of parts of LA are pretty bad too, but like LA's not nearly as encouraging it as the Bay Area with their overall policy and approach. Like, the Bay Area thinks a good solution to homelessness is to talk about how everybody has the right to housing. Like, look, if we all acted as though that were so and really believed it, then everybody would have housing. You know, it's like, we're going to protest government. Everyone has a right to housing. Why don't you get it to them? Well, lying in the bed they made. So Bears is complete shithole. Not around here, it's not. Mariposa is blessedly not afflicted by any of the blight that's up and down the West Coast. Because the West Coast is increasingly a blighted land where there's no empty public space to occupy. There's no good way to move through the world except transactionally all the time, you know, because every place you can go and everything you could do costs money and is some sort of curated experience, and you know, it's just like in exchange for that soul-killing regimen of blandness, you get traffic, noise, garbage, lines everywhere, a whole population of people on slow frustration boil. It's just toxic. Sound of the stream is nice. But where are the sirens? Shouldn't some ambulances be driving around in circles by now? Some old lady fell down. Let's send out an ambulance, 2 fire trucks, and 6 cops' cars. And a helicopter. That's how they did it in Arcadia. It was ridiculous. Arcadia's got too many resources, too few problems. It's like, oh, do we really need all those fire trucks? How many fires are there in Arcadia? Every once in a while, there might be a fire. There was a fire. I mean, I filmed a fire in Arcadia, but it was a car fire. I guess you still need firemen for that, but I don't know if you need those big trucks with the ladders and shit, you know. It seems a little unnecessary and excessive. Fortunately, it's not my problem no more. We don't have stupid municipal level government here in Mariposa. Only the county. And I gotta say, the county did a pretty good job. I mean, medium job. Their repairs of the potholes were, frankly, quite half-assed. I'm not even sure if they used half of their ass. They may have just used like a third of their ass. Originally, I like to call them the flag putters. The county goes around and puts flags on things that they think maybe they want to repair at some point. Drive around, you see all these little orange flags, and you go, oh, the county's musing about maybe repairing that someday. Well, I gotta say, I gotta give them credit. They finished the Dara Street Bridge. When we moved here, it was under construction. We were told it's been under construction for like 3 years, or something like that, you know? I like how you distinguish between Indians and the colonials as the natives and the Americans. Yes, and it was over control of the butterflies. The Indians wanted exclusive access to that scenic beauty. So did the cowboys. And the reason it was the most brutal war in American history is because the entire war was fought with biting. The men bit each other to death. It was the only weapon they had. All of the people had no arms. So it was just a really crazy coincidence that a tribe of Indians, all of whom had had their arms chopped off, came up against a group of cowboys. They too had all had their arms chopped off. It's one of history's weirdest coincidences, but also one of history's brutalest wars. Some men died of overeating. Others died of being overeaten. The U.S. has 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prisoners. Let's find more reasons to throw folks in prison. You know what? I don't think we should take any of the world's prisoners. We have enough of our own. They had all lost them in separate accidents or incidents. Just incidentally all around this 1-2 week cluster. First, Joe accidentally stuck both his arms into a wheat thresher. Then Steve foolishly stuck his arms out the window while riding on a train, and a tree came and chopped them off. How many comments are there? Because I just got here. By the way, who is Michelle Shocked? She's the woman who's suing me. She's a musical artist from like the 80s who made a couple of actually quite good albums. And I wanted to find her songs to listen to them online, and I couldn't find them. So I tracked them down to the Internet Archive, and I made a video saying, here's where you can find these songs. I couldn't find them. And I guess I violated her copyright. I may have played a chunk of one of the songs. I don't have access to the video anymore because it was issued a takedown notice, and I got a copyright strike, and I had to take copyright class. Anyway, that wasn't enough pound of flesh for her, so now she's saying she's going to sue me. She sent me a document, asked me to sign it, told me to sign it. It was a waiver of my right to be subpoenaed. Obviously, I'm not going to sign this. Actually, subpoena me, so I can read the subpoena and respond accordingly. You know. The thing is, I've looked into it. Yeah, she's like Prince before he croaked, exactly. But the thing is, I've looked into it. It's a weird situation because normally in copyright things like this, the takedown notice functions like a demand letter. And then if you meet the demand, in other words, take it down, then no further action is taken. But that doesn't mean she can't take further action, and she apparently has chosen to. The thing is, she's not going to be eligible to receive any kind of damages for actual harms because she can't articulate any actual financial losses. In fact, if anything, the only thing we could articulate is potential benefits, because it was only because of my video that she became aware that the Internet Archive had her songs up there. And obviously, that's much more of a threat to her copyright than me. So, you know, she can't possibly get damages for actual harms. It wasn't even up for like 5 minutes, probably, you know, before she's such a copyright enthusiast. So there's no way she can articulate any actual harms. So that leaves us with statutory damages. Statutory damages are specific to copyright law, or at least they're one thing that's specific to copyright law that makes them distinct from, that makes this distinct from a normal civil case. So the thing about statutory damages, I need to research it more, but I think I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think basically they're saying if you committed the equivalent of a crime against this person with your copyright violation, then, but we're not prosecuting it in a criminal court, the law sets aside automatic damages regardless of context, but with certain caveats. So I need to relook at it again, the structure of the possible statutory damages. But it would seem that some of the or probably the most significant caveat is the nature of the statutory damage that would be awarded is contingent on whether or not the copyright violation was willful. What's interesting about willful is it would seem to me, again, I've been thinking about this a lot, it would seem to me to lie somewhere between purposeful and knowingly intentional. So in the first instance, purposeful just means it's not accidental. You didn't click and accidentally click this link, and then it started automatically downloading something that's illegal for you to download, and then you didn't even notice, and you clicked this other link over here. That would be accidental, right? It still would comprise a violation of copyright, but there was nothing intentional about it at all. Purposeful would say, yes, you purposefully clicked that link, but you didn't do it for the purpose of violating copyright, or you didn't do it knowingly as a violation of copyright. And then at the far end of this would be, you purposefully, knowingly violated copyright for personal profit. That would be like the most extreme kind of end of that. Willfully seems to land somewhere between purposefully, but not intending to violate copyright. Like you purposely took the action, but you didn't do it knowing you were violating copyright or that it comprised a copyright violation. And explicitly, purposely doing it for profit. Willfully would seem to imply that you had some knowledge that what you were doing was a copyright violation. But it's hard to say, because given that these are statutory damages, willfully could just mean not accidentally. And the actuality about whether it's a violation is determinate. And so, in other words, it doesn't matter if you knew. In other words, the question is basically this. Obviously, ignorance of the law is no excuse, but ignorance of the law could be the determining factor as to whether something qualifies as being willfully done, right? And I'm not sure how they're defining willfully in that regard. So I need to do more research before I know for sure how much liability I actually have, you know? But when I say actually have, I mean, how much can she legitimately point to as the indicated statutory damages by the letter of the law, factoring nothing else in? The thing is, I don't think the court is going to factor nothing else in, because there is the reality that she's not actually suing me for copyright violation. She's using that. She's suing me for copyright violation as a means of executing a vindictive agenda against me because she's so extremely hostile towards me. She's being hyper litigious because, after all, the demand letter part, quote unquote, which is the takedown notice, I met her demands. So that's, you know, since I met her demands and she has no actual harms, she does have standing probably to take the case before the court and say I should get these statutory damages, but I don't think the court's going to agree with her. We'll see what happens. You know, it's like the maximum, given that I don't qualify for the like $100,000 one, the maximum statutory damages that could be awarded is $30,000. But if you're trying to consider proportionality in awarding damages, then I would be very far from the kind of behavior that would qualify for the high end of it, right? If you're factoring in the scope, scale, frequency, other qualities of the violation in determining the damages, and the max is 30,000. Well, the guy who has to pay $30,000 doesn't look like me. Hasn't done what I've done. Did something much worse, or much more have a pattern of bad behavior. So I might lose. Again, I don't really know anything for sure because I don't know. I can't watch the video that is the violation, that comprises the violation, right? And until I can watch it, I won't know exactly what I said and or did. You know, I don't remember. I remember what it was about. Like, here's where you can find her music. Did I, in that video, say, here, let me play a little bit of it? Did I, or did it just sort of autoplay and I go, oops, and then in the video? Did I say, hey, let me play a little bit of it, and now I'm going to download it? I have no idea. So, what the content of that video is going to be obviously significant in exactly how this thing plays out. But even in the worst case scenario, I still obviously learned my lesson, didn't attempt to repeat any kind of copyright stuff with her at all. In fact, went out of my way to not, as demonstrated by, like, I'm not going to sing that song that I've heard because it might get me in big trouble, you know? Imagine being a washed-up rocker going after the 8 fans you have left for covering your songs. Her younger self would probably vomit at the thought, so not rock and roll. Well, I don't know what's going on with her. I know that she had sort of big public trouble regarding some comments she made at some show about some comments about homosexuals or something like that. And I guess she's, from what I can guess, she seems quite temperamental, you might say, you know. But that's not any reason to deny the quality of the work that she did when she did good work. Not many people can say they got a couple of pretty great albums under their belts. So, you know, I regret an earlier video where I let my being pissy at her misrepresent the quality of her music, presented as that it weren't as good as it is. It's quite good. Well, I mean, not all of it, but some of it is quite good. But that doesn't justify her taking so antisocial an approach to enforcing her copyright. I mean, she has plenty of other options besides a takedown notice. And then once she issues the harshest thing she can, a takedown notice, gets me a copyright strike and all that stuff, then she additionally wants to sue me? I mean, it's, you know, as a society, we don't want to reward behavior like that. It's not about copyright specifically. It's just like your neighbor goes and steps on your lawn and you file a lawsuit for trespassing. You don't want to encourage that shit, right? Yes, it's a trespass, but it's a minor one. He's promised not to do it again. It's not done it since, and you know, maybe you shouldn't be filing a lawsuit against them. There's a certain amount of common sense that has a receptive audience in courts, I think, like that. The courts don't want to be utilized as a tool in Michelle Shock's revenge campaign. I'm a very reasonable and forthright person. So I'm not going to be trying to bullshit anybody at any point. In order to make her case, she's going to have to be trying to bullshit people the whole time, because in no just world does she deserve damages from me for that video that was up for 5 seconds before it got taken down. It's not, it just doesn't sit well intuitively with anybody, I don't think. That besides getting me a copyright strike, it would additionally be necessary to sue me, even though she's incurred no harms, because she can potentially make the case for a certain kind of statutory damage. I mean, it might work, but I don't think so. I mean, I'm envisioning a lengthy deposition as well. And I don't imagine her being good on the stand. She seems awfully volatile. So, I'm also unsure about the forum. Like, is this the sort of thing where I can request a jury trial? The Constitution talks about the terms under which you can do that for civil trials, but this is a copyright trial, which is neither criminal nor a normal civil trial. So I'm going to have to do more research. But I'm not going to bother doing too much more research until she actually subpoenas me. She may decide not to. I was thinking about that too. It's like, she's either got to hire a lawyer or not hire a lawyer. She can't get one to take this on spec. The top end of the damages isn't enough to make it worth their while, and any sensible lawyer would see they're very unlikely to get the top end of the damages. So she'd have to pay a retainer to a lawyer if she's going to have one. It looks like she'd probably do it herself. She's very litigious. I'm sure she's familiar with the processes. But what that boils down to is, if she's doing it herself, then there's not really any way she's going to be able to get me to, even if she wins, to get the court to have me pay her legal fees, or if I have to, they'd be nominal. If she gets a lawyer, well, hopefully she gets a lawyer who prefers billable hours over winning, because I will make sure that, if nothing else, I make plenty of work for that lawyer, filing plenty of motions, everything I can think of, and make sure that it costs her as much as possible on a speculative venture that she's going to win. Because then if she loses, she is out all the money she had to pay to that lawyer. If I lose, I feel confident that even if I lose, the courts, and even if she does have a lawyer, the courts won't make me pay her legal costs um, because that's at the judge's discretion. That's not stipulated they have to do either way. It's entirely at the judge's discretion. And for reasons I've already articulated, the judges are not going to use that discretion to further punish me because it's just not that kind of case. I'm not a copyright scofflaw, and a bunch of various factors. If anything, they'll use it to admonish her, even though they feel they have to rule in her favor by denying her the motion to have me pay her legal costs. And so whatever settlement she receives, well, hopefully it'll be less than the amount she spent to the lawyer. So anyway, the nice thing is I'm not worried about it because I know the spectrum of possible outcomes. I don't have to wonder about that. And I can clearly see where all the possible legal arguments are, even though I know what I need to learn still. So it's like I'm not worried about it because any areas of uncertainty in it don't have expanding returns, have diminishing returns in terms of significance or weight. So I can feel very comfortable that when she subpoenas me, or if she subpoenas me, when she subpoenas me, that I'm not going to be surprised by anything in the subpoena. She only has standing to make certain kinds of claims, and so even if there's claims that do surprise me, they will not possibly withstand judicial scrutiny because it doesn't meet those criteria. So therefore, it's not surprising me in a way that's effective at all. It'd be like surprising me like, well, that's dumb. Like her sending me a waiver to sign so she doesn't have to subpoena me. That surprised me, but not like in a strategically good way because obviously I'm not going to sign that. It gives me a heads up to the fact that she's going to subpoena me, so I now have time to anticipate all this shit ahead of time. I'm not blindsided by it, and it's not going to have any negative emotional impact on me or spiritual impact or anything like that. I'm entirely prepared to handle it. And to the extent that she's fully correct about my having incurred some liability, then I should be accountable for that. But we'll see what she can establish and so forth. I'd rather go to court and have a verdict against me than settle or be intimidated by the threat of legal action into anything except going to court. I believe in our courts, and I believe in that transparent accountability for them. To the extent that means I have to be accountable in some fashion, so it goes. But because I believe in the accountability forum, I don't think they are going to impose an outsized, disproportionate consequence for what's a violation, but that has no harms and wasn't motivated by personal profit. I mean, it might also be relevant sort of in general argumentationally, but I don't know if it's relevant enough to put into a brief or something, but that her behavior is an extreme outlier regarding copyright, and that I behaved in a way that if it had been any other person, they would have either just claimed the money for it, I would have had to take it down but not gotten a strike, I would have had a chance to cut out the offending part, or any of the other possible remedies available to people when they experience copyright violations. Every other person that I've ever encountered chooses one of those other options besides copyright striking you immediately. So already you can see that, well, technically within our rights, to the extent that reasonable expectations come into play, say on the question of willfully, I had myriad experiences that repeatedly informed me what I'm doing is fine, and if it's not, I'll have to take it down, and then I'll know, I guess, that that's not okay, you know. I had no reason to believe that in any of those instances I was incurring any liability because I had never experienced anybody treating copyright in that fashion on this platform. So you know, it's like, is that relevant to the case? Well, it may be, depending on how they define willfully. If it's undefined, then that's the substance of your brief, is this is why we should define it like this, you know? If I can, I mean, I already know that, like, my first motion, as soon as I get the subpoena, is going to be to dismiss with prejudice, and my grounds are going to be that she has no standing for actual harm damages, and her standing for statutory damages top out at $200 because it doesn't meet the standard of willfully for the reasons I articulate there. And thus, this qualifies as a frivolous lawsuit. It's a waste of the court's time and is clearly simply a way for her to exact revenge by subverting the court to her own spiteful purposes. You know, we'll see if that works. I mean, it might. It's a strong argument for dismissal with prejudice because it includes in it that she's engaged in a malfeasance of sorts, or at least a misuse of the courts. So that would be a good justification for the with prejudice part. a failure to have sufficient standing. Like, this isn't small claims court. She's going to be taking me to federal court for $200. The courts should dismiss it as frivolous, you know? If I can establish that the maximum statutory damage she could get based on the criteria established in both the law and the case law, that I don't qualify as willfully, then they should dismiss it with prejudice. After all, she has so little legitimate standing for damages that it's like we probably both pay more than $200 for parking over the course of the week. you know. Anyway, as you can see why I'm not worried about it, right? It's because she alerted me to the fact that she was going to subpoena me before she actually did. So I'm not scrambling to respond to a subpoena right now. I'm preparing to not need to scramble when the subpoena comes by having anticipated all of the relevant factors, knowing what I'm going to say, what angle of argumentation I'm going to take, multiple, each in its own briefer motion. And at that point, it just becomes interesting to me, you know. Maybe I'll win, maybe I'll lose, but I'm pretty good at evaluating case strength, and I mean, I believe justice is on my side, you know. So, obviously, there's nothing to worry about. You know, if you're in the right, if it's wrong for me to have to pay her substantial damages to this woman because it runs contrary to justice, then you have absolutely nothing to worry about, because even if the court rules against you, it's a travesty of justice. They made a mistake, you know. You know that the best decision was not that one. You probably have grounds for appeal. You know, the more motions you file, the more they deny, the more grounds you have for appeal. So, so I guess basically it's like saying, okay, well, this lady does have a wicked right hook, maybe, possibly. We're not sure yet. But that's what's being intimated here. But I'm Floyd Mayweather, so how worried really should I be? I'm more just interested in it than worried at all. I guess I have a little bit of excited for the opportunity to demonstrate how thoroughly reasonable and correct I am about everything, about all the details of this, because I'm not going to be bullshitting. If in fact I see the video and I committed clearly a violation, then I'll acknowledge that right off the bat and say, yes, the violation occurred, and I am responsible for it. That doesn't necessarily mean she should get damages, you know. I mean, at no point, no matter what happens, am I going to lie or misrepresent things. If I have to do that to win, then I don't deserve to win. So, anyway, you know, if you're a bit of a gunslinger on YouTube, like I am, and you get accustomed to people shooting back at you, sometimes it looks like they really are going to shoot that bazooka at you this time. But you never know until the bullet's headed your way. And you are not yourself unarmed, nor are you defenseless. So, you know. Like, one of my favorite memories is, as I said the other day, is when I went to talk to the people at Pomona and tell my story about the cop and basically testify about how things were, how things should have been, how things were. And of course, I explicitly didn't have any particular agenda in my retelling of exactly what happened. It was very factual and neutral. The person interviewing me was accustomed to interviewing people who didn't know how to be, you know, how to be a lawyer's dream affidavit, right? He'd never encountered anybody who gave him so dream an affidavit as I did. So anyway, that was really fun for me. This I'm kind of excited about for the same reason. Because it gives me an opportunity in a public forum to demonstrate how people ought to be. But really, because then people will be like, oh, it's so cool. That's really why. Anyway, that's why it makes it hard to scare me with threats of legal action. Usually people are really upset if they think someone's going to take legal action against them. I might be upset if I were busy. You know, if I had a full-time job, I'd be like, I got time for this shit. But since I don't, I do have time for this shit. And it sounds like a fantastic cocktail party story, no matter how it turns out. So anyway. All right. Since everybody else is gone, there's only 4 people left. I guess I might as well go now too. I could go to bed. I'm not tired. I don't want to go to bed right now because I'm not tired at all. But I want to be tired and go to bed. So I think what I'll do is take 2 Seroquel right now. And as soon as I get so tired that I'm like, oh, then I'll stop the stream and then I'll go to bed. It hit pretty quick and they really kind of knocked me out. So probably I'm looking at 15 minutes here. These things are good for sleeping. You hit the sack. That's fine. You go ahead and beat me to bed. That's not a problem. I'm just killing time till I'm sleepy for 15 minutes anyway. I promise not to talk about anything interesting. So, the most interesting thing came up. What was it again? Oh, right. Snakes and chickens forming teams. It's been in the news. Snakes have become forming teams with chickens. And together they go out and kill various animals. Then the snake eats the animal. Then the snake grows some grain to give to the chicken. It's disrupting ecosystems all around the world. I'm concerned. Our first guest today to talk about it is Dr. Beverly Schmitten from the University of Minnesota at Michigan State. Dr. Beverly, do you mind if I call you Dr. Beverly? Please, my name is Dr. Beverly Beverly. Was that your last name? Well, you mispronounced it badly. My last name is pronounced Beverly. But it's spelled M-C-E-E. It's pronounced Beverly. Okay, Dr. Beverly. Can you please tell us what you have to say about this important topic? Yes. It is absolutely critical that we, as a people, as a nation, learn more about awareness regarding this topic. Boy, I couldn't agree more, Dr. Beverly. That's why I've got on this green ribbon, this pink ribbon, this red ribbon, and the brown ribbon. I don't see a gray ribbon. As you can see, I have the gray ribbon. So I guess you're aware of the gray issue, huh? A lot more aware than you are. Well, Dr. Beverly, you just raised my awareness. And Judy, can you get me a gray ribbon, please? Thanks. So today's awareness cavalcade, we're going to begin with autism. We're going to move on towards Hearing Impaired Awareness Week. We're going to become aware of breast cancer, for those of you who still, for some reason, are not aware of it. Then we're going to raise awareness about kidney disease. And then finally, we're going to talk about how aware we need to be regarding Mexican malaria, which is a Mexican variant of malaria carried by Mexican mosquitoes who have begun sneaking over the border Well, they've been colluding with the Africanized bees to do so. We've been pretty good at our interdictions. We've got swarms of DEA agents down there. But, yeah. If you've got Mexican malaria, please don't come to my birthday party. It's contagious. And they don't have a vaccine for it yet. Everybody lock yourself inside the house. Well, now I have to stay. I know. It's because they won't let us leave until after the show's over. It's like, they keep trying to politely exit, but the performers go, no, wait, we're not done. We feel obligated. Stay a little longer. Hopefully this play gets good. So far, it's terrible. Why is the play so terrible? Because it's about two pilots flying from New York to Los Angeles who get lost along the way and find themselves in a Broadway play being performed in the heart of Oklahoma by an amateur cast of high school students, all of whom have cerebral palsy. Oh, kitty. Well, it doesn't sound that bad. Oh, it's terrible. You should hear the songs. It's a musical, and it's very, very literal musical. It's like, at the beginning, the pilots are flying the plane, and like the first song in the musical is literally like, we're flying, we're flying, we're flying the plane. I'm the pilot, and that's my name. He's co-pilot, his name is Jim. We're flying this plane. Once again, we've flown before. Because we're pilots, we've flown before. That does sound like a terrible musical. And then, like, what's another example of being too literal in the songs, Eric? Well, like when they meet with all the kids, the first pilot's like, hey, what is wrong with these children? I guess I don't know. I think I know what's wrong with those children, says the co-pilot. They've got cerebral cerebral palsy. All these kids have it. From the creators of Menopause the Musical comes the next Tony Award winning hit, Cerebral Palsy Kids. Look at that. The woke theater reporters. The title of his review is Nothing Cerebral About These Kids, in quotes. Like he's making a terrible pun. But it doesn't get understood clearly by people, and so they think he's saying the kids are dumb. Then they all write in letters saying what a hateful bigot he is. Then he has to write an apology column saying he didn't mean it that way, but he recognizes that people were hurt nevertheless, and he is deeply, deeply sorry about it. And, after that, he's not so much the darling of the woke community anymore. Because they know now he's ableist. And that's not okay. So anyway, they all ostracized him. They Go write for a conservative paper, you. You're no longer welcome here at Mother Jones. Oh, kitty, you love to rub your head against my feet. You will stand up and cheer, Chicago Sun-Times. I will. I want to see some positive review of Menopause the Musical. It says something like that. And I want to write to that person who wrote that review and say, just to let you know, I did not stand up and cheer. I neither stood up nor cheered. I did not cheer, and the only time I stood up was to leave 15 minutes into the first act. Anyway, cerebral palsy kids needs to get in line, of course, among my behind my other important films, including Home More, the story of the lady who graduates from Vassar with a degree in dance therapy or something like that. And, she naturally, she puts together a troupe, a homeless dance troupe, a dance troupe of homeless people. And they work really hard and get to perform at the inauguration of the president. They almost don't get to. There's a ticking clock suspense thing. But finally it gets resolved. In the nick of time, they come on the stage. And then some senator who's like the bad guy goes, "Wow, isn't that wonderful for all you homeless people?" And then the sassy main character says, "Homeless? We ain't homeless. We home more. Kick it down, girls." And then they do their dance thing. Everybody cheers. Everybody leaves, wiping their eyes. Oh, that was so inspirational. I loved how Victoria kicked her drug habit, and she was like the star. Who wouldn't pay to go see that? The thing is, they actually make movies like that. For example, there's recently a movie with Woody Harrelson in it. I forget what it was called, like Champions or something. And it was about an NBA coach who got fired, sort of. The only way he could get his job back is if he successfully coaches this retarded team. This basketball team of nothing but retarded people. Cast with actual retarded people. That is not a good idea for a movie. That is a recipe for relentless cringe. Like spine-breaking cringe. The kind of cringe some people may never recover from. People like me. I cannot think of a movie I less want to see than that movie. I'd rather watch a Vincent Gallo interview than that movie. I'd rather rewatch Aquaman than watch that movie. It's such an inconceivably bad idea. I can't imagine any way they could possibly make it work. It's like If you've just got a pretty bad idea, well, maybe if you put a lot of shiny things and lots of fucking soundtrack and maybe make it 3D and well maybe it can have enough bells and whistles to distract me from its badness, right? Maybe you might have some hope of fixing your bad idea by doing good execution, right? You can't execute a terrible idea well. It's just not possible. That movie was a terrible idea. Did people? Who would go see that? How many people go see that movie? And why would they go see it? I mean, I guess I understand maybe retarded people going to see it because it's about them and stuff. But there's not that many retarded people. So I'm curious about the non-retarded people who aren't like family members of retarded people, okay? Just regular people with no retarded people in their life. How many of them go to see that movie and why? What are they supposed to experience? What do they anticipate themselves experiencing watching it that they look forward to? Is it an aggravatingly inscrutable feast for the senses? I am feasting here, but I cannot tell what I am feasting on. It is aggravatingly inscrutable, this feast. Boroughs. I'm feasting on the boroughs of New York. They should have just named them borough number 1, borough number 2, etc. All the way to borough number 3. I don't need no fancy names. Queens. How many actual queens live in Queens? I'd be surprised if a single actual queen lived in Queens. Better brush your teeth after that movie. Yeah. Yeah, it's a terrible idea. Somehow that got green lighted into an actual movie. And they got Woody Harrelson to be in it. What made Woody Harrelson say, "Yeah, I wanna do this movie"? I don't know. But some movies with fine enough concepts are also terrible. You don't have to have a terrible concept to be terrible. Aquaman didn't really have any concept at all, as far as I could tell. I could not tell you what happened in that movie. They just sort of went around places and yeah, or something. I don't know. That's basically all I remember that movie is them going around places and chawing and stuff. I remember them riding manta rays and like planes under the water, and they were getting shot down under the water. And they go like this and crash into the bottom of the ocean and explode. Why are those rays falling so rapidly through the water first for the first place? And then what in the world makes them explode when they hit the ground? Did they have explosives attached to themselves so that they would explode when they hit the ground? Were there explosives in the ground that they landed on? It's not clear why the manta rays exploded. Best bizarre, confusing film I've ever seen was Black Moon from 1975. Okay, maybe I'll check it out. I'll tell you, there's a bizarre, confusing cartoon I'm watching right now on Crunchyroll called X and Y. So I finally realized this is not going anywhere. It's like they keep having these mysterious things happen, like I'm here, now I'm dreaming, but it's just like real life. And now I'm in an escape room. And oh, this is a dangerous escape room. If I fuck it up, if I get it wrong, this thing drops and acid falls near me. I better figure out the puzzle. And then as soon as he figures out the puzzle, he wakes up. Oh, wait, was that a dream? Wasn't it a dream? Lady? Escape room proprietor lady? Are you doing this? Am I doing this? Or maybe it's one of your friends. You should be suspicious of everybody. But was that a dream? What dream? Did I have a dream? It's like that, except none of the questions ever get answered. They just keep asking more mysterious questions. What just happened? And the audience member, me, is also saying, yeah, what did just happen though? Like, why was he over there and now all of a sudden he's over here? And why is that lady with him now? Where did she come from? And then he kind of has a facial expression like he looks confused, but you're not sure if he's confused about the same thing you're confused about. It's a strange cartoon, X and Y. That's the name of the escape room business that is one of the central players in this whole weird procession of I don't know what reality is anymore. And the audience is like, and I don't know what's happening. Is anything happening? So did that guy actually die, or were you just dreaming that? Like there's this thing happening in this one I watched today. He was having this dream, and he was solving the escape room. Meanwhile, this girl who's been kidnapped and went missing is briefly shown echoing immediately what the guy did in her own escape room, which apparently is where she's being held prisoner. Then he faces the escape room. There's no further mention of her. And like she was left with, oh no, some acid fell near me and it burnt the holes in my clothes and I got a little bit on my skin. And then they never got back to that at all. They might get back to it next time. But I already know it's going to be like, so was she doing it when I was doing it? And then the lady will be like, I don't remember what you're talking about. And then he'll look at the proprietor lady and she'll be like, do you doubt me again? It's just, resolve something, please. But I keep watching it every week. It's not so bad that I don't watch it. Like, there's one called Summoned to Another World for the Second Time. It's so bad that I can barely watch it. But I still managed to watch that one. there's a minimum threshold of good that I will watch. It usually bottoms out at around 4.2 or 4.3 stars. If it's any lower than that, there's just zero point in even attempting it. I've tried them before and they're all fucking terrible. So don't even waste your time with any anime and Crunchyroll under 4.2. I think X and Y is like 4.4 or something like that. But it's better than Summon to Another World for a Second Time, which I think might be 4.2. And on the other hand, once you get to 4.8, you can be pretty well assured that it's going to be great. And if you get 4.9, you know it's absolute cream of the crop. The only things that get 4.9 are things like Attack on Titan. And I don't know, something else. Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff is needed when dealing with powerful problems. That's why I use Resolve Carpet Cleaner. I used it earlier. It made a clean spot on the carpet. So now that spot looks cleaner than the surrounding carpet. Previously, it looked dirtier than the surrounding carpet. It had three distinct spots, So that's why I cleaned it. But now I have the opposite problem. It still looks different than the surrounding carpet. It just looks cleaner now instead of dirtier. Oh well, I guess I should probably get a carpet washing cleaning thing. Like actually just buy one, but buy a good one that makes it easy to do your own carpet cleaning. Because this carpet's getting dirty. It's inevitable. We walk around. Walking inside from outside here, especially right now when it's a fucking complete mess outside because I'm stripping the concrete and the paint and stuff. Even when not, there's just a lot of dirt and dust and stuff, so you end up tracking stuff into the house. Pine needles, sunflower seed shells, stuff like that. Gets on the carpet, and then you sit here in your Eric and you look at it and you go, oh, you did a vacuum. Finally I did tonight. And now it looks nice. It looks nice and clean. And I don't need to vacuum. Doesn't look like I need to vacuum. You got to be quite diligent in your vacuuming because there's a lot of sneaky little bits of thing. You think this spot's clean, you're listening, right? You're listening for the sound of that tells you you're vacuuming stuff up. When you're not hearing it at all, you go, okay, this spot is clean. Now let me go over here. Okay, let me just double check this spot. I thought that spot was clean, but there's still more stuff there. That's why you gotta hit it with the regular tube, just pow, then with a brush attachment so you can shake it up a little bit in the carpet and knock loose compacted bits of or basically like sand particle that fell too far down, stuff like that. Sand particles, nobody wants them. So if you have a lot of sand particles and you're trying to give them away, you're not going to find any takers. People only want whole pieces of sand, not just particles of sand. A full-size piece of sand is called a grain of sand. A particle of sand, on the other hand, it's like a grain of sand with one of the electrons removed. I don't know if you know this or not, but a grain of sand has one proton, one neutron, and two electrons. The proton is from an atom of iron. The neutron is from an atom of californium. And the electrons are both from atoms of gold. That equals a normal grain of sand. However, if that grain of sand is a compound grain of sand, which is to say it's a normal grain of sand, but it's been colonized by particles of sand attracted to those two negative electrons because the particles of sand are submissives. They enjoy the negativity. They find it sexually arousing. That's why they're attracted. When you get a compound grain of sand, well, just throw it away. There's no saving it. Before you know it, the internal grain of sand around which the particles of sand have clustered becomes itself nothing but a cluster of particles of sand. Then instead of having one grain of sand, you just got a whole ball full of little particles of sand. And the only way to get it back into a grain of sand would be to heat it so high that it becomes plasma, at which point it'll reconstitute into a grain of sand. And that's why scientists don't like it when you ask them to reconstitute your grain of sand. They say the amount of resources to do this is too great. It's not easy to get things that hot, Eric. Especially a single grain of sand. Now, remind them that's not a grain of sand. That's an amalgam of particles of sand. That's the problem. They insist, we still don't see why that's the problem. Because they're particle lovers. They have I like to say they have a particle fetish. They say it's perfectly healthy to love particles. I agree with particles of plenty of things, but not sand. I say, okay, well, particles of what then? There's particles of butter. Like, you could spread your whole English muffin with nothing but particles of butter. And it tastes exactly like spreading it with squares of butter. And the scientists are like, really? The other guy's like, yeah. And then they all have butter particles. You know what? I like this live stream. My cousin put those vids are very satisfying to watch. What vids? Which ones are satisfying to watch? Are you talking about the movie Blue Thunder? I don't remember it well enough, but I'll take your word for it. If it is, in fact, very satisfying to watch, then maybe I should watch it. Blue Thunder, it's a movie about a helicopter. It's true. Blue Thunder is a movie about a helicopter. It might be about more than one helicopter. I'm not sure how many helicopters appear in the movie. But the main helicopter character is Blue Thunder. He's a helicopter that you can both respect and admire. You can cherish that helicopter because it has specially implanted cherishment receptors in between the rotor, blades of its rotor. It also has a motor which helps it to fly around, and a coder who makes cellular phone apps for a helicopter during down times during flight, And of course, they also have Kurt Loder there reading the news to them. Not the regular news, the MTV news mostly, but I think the MTV news is really just whatever Kurt Loder says. There's not a real criteria that you're using to see if something qualifies as MTV news or just regular news. And that's why I'm suing them. I'm going to sue them. First, I got to subpoena them. Then I'm going to sue them. And I was like, hi. You are horrible. I hate you. I sue you so much. First, I'm going to sue you with my left hand. Then I'm going to sue you with my right. Then I'll sue you with my Yeah, I'm super tired. I'm getting ready for bed here. It's also kind of cold in here. It's not that cold to turn on the heater, though. It's not going to be too hot. Those Seroquels freaking knock me out, man. 2 of these 25s is like, okay, I better get into bed before I pass out on the floor, Unlike Klonopin. Klonopin is slow-acting Tinactin. Take half a Klonopin, and that's the only thing I take. I won't feel especially sleepy, potentially for like 4 or 6 hours after I take it, It really takes a long time to kick in. Even though when it does kick in, it's not as overwhelmingly sleep-inducing as just 225 milligram Seroquels. Of course, they don't keep you asleep nearly as long. But I like how they are fast-acting Tinactin. That's preferable to slow-acting Tinactin. Yes, I finally went pee. You know what I think? I'm not entirely sure, but I think that parodies, like changing the words to a song, like make it silly or something like that, I think that actually exempts you from, that doesn't qualify as a copyright violation. Even if somebody were to be super litigious, like John Aladdin, the composer of the Aladdin songs. If you do it as a parody, then they can't sue you. But that's not relevant to my situation. But regardless, it's something I believe to be the case and find Rather surprising, actually. And the reason I feel surprised is because I received a sorpresa. Sorpresa is a word that was born in Puerto Rico, but moved to Mexico at the age of 3. There, in the reliable adobe dwellings of old Mexico, he learned the classic art of tortilla making from Abuelita Gomez. Abuelita Gomez was known not only in her own pueblo, but in neighboring villages as well, as the best tortilla maker in all of Chihuahua. You guys have to wait for a second, because I am taking off my glasses. I'm going to put them over there. I'm going to take out this jacket, because you can't go to bed in a jacket. It's going to be uncomfortable if you do that. It's too bulky for bed. Bulky. I've been fortunate if some parent wanted to name their kid Becky, but accidentally misspelled it on the thing and wrote bulky. I'll tell you the story of bulky now before we go to bed. Okay. And after this story, we gotta end the stream and put you guys to bed because it's past your bedtime. Oh man. It's cold in here. Okay, so here's the story of Bulky. Once there was a young person, a newborn baby, and at the hospital. He's just come outside of his mom. Was lying on the birthing table, waggling its arms and legs back and forth like babies do, making some noises. Surprisingly quiet noises because it's just brand newborn baby. Anyway, there was this baby, and it was there on the table of the hospital. And like I said, right? And the mom, she was had her legs up in the stirrups and the sheet over her, so like, kind of like, you probably don't want to lurk down there because there's like a whole little baby human coming out of her puss. So anyway, the baby was sitting there, and she's trying to look back at her mom, but she didn't really know how to move her head around or anything. Not yet, not properly. And she like move it like wiggle a little bit, but she wasn't able to, she basically she couldn't walk. That makes her much like almost all the babies, right? most of the newborn babies, they don't walk right away as they come out of the puss. It takes them more than just 15 minutes to start walking around. So anyway, the doctor said, okay, Jason. Jason was the husband of the lady. And Jason said, yeah, doctor? The doctor said, do you remember what my name is? And and the husband, his name I don't quite recall right now. I don't know what I'm talking about at all. I gotta go to bed. This is like impossible to even continue telling the story. I'm so tired. I have no idea what story I even began to tell in the first place. It was the story of too many things. The story of too many things is a story of having a persistent identity, and that identity retaining specific objects across what word do you think comes next? If you guessed time, you were right. Okay, it's time to go. Good night, everybody. Too asleep to do anymore.